Welcome, everybody, to the Consolidated Irrigation District's Proposition 218 election public workshop. This will be a webinar format, and we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. We're going to try to keep this to within 1 hour. And just before we get started, Becca is going to cover a few housekeeping items.
Great. Yeah, so we are using the Zoom platform. As you all know, you joined using your Zoom link. Just wanted to let the attendees know that your video and microphone is automatically turned off. So we can't see or hear you. Just wanted to make that clear. But hopefully you should be able to see and hear us here in the conference room. The webinar is being recorded and it will be made available online on Consolidated's website. We'll make sure that that link is sent out through the email list. If you're not on CID's email list, you can just put your email in the chat and we'll make sure that you get added so you can see when that becomes available. For Q&A, we would ask that you'll see in your toolbar, the menu of your Zoom, that there's a Q&A button. So you can use that to type a question and you can submit that at any time. So if you have questions that come up during the presentation, type them into there and those will be addressed at the end. If you prefer to ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand and request that we unmute you. So we can do that on our end so that then we can hear you and respond to your question that way. So all the questions we will hold until the end of the presentation. We'll run through them, make sure that we get those addressed. And then for any technical problems that you might be having with Zoom, the other button on your menu is the chat. So for any technical issues, you can drop them into the chat and we will be monitoring that and we can respond. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. It's about 12:03. We've got folks in the room, in the Zoom room. So Phil, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phil Desitoff. I'm the general manager here at Consolidated Irrigation District. We're also manager of the Central Kings GSA, which is essentially the same entity. It's the same board, pretty much the same area. So CID is involved with groundwater, has been for a long time. And so the board's also acting as the Central Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So you've seen the agenda. I'm gonna start off with a little background on the district and then we'll just proceed from there. So Consolidated Irrigation District is a member of the Kings River Water Association. We're a senior water rights holder for water off the Kings River. We do occasionally get some water from the San Joaquin, either flood water or 215 water, but on occasion we get that, but not very often. So we are almost entirely dependent upon Kings River water. Our average annual diversion is approximately 273,000 acre feet per year. That's the average since Pine Flat Dam was constructed. So we're importing about 270,000 acre feet a year of Kings River water supply. We have about 141,000 acres in the district. The top three crops are almonds, grapes, and citrus. And we have over 4,800 growers, 4,800 growers in the district. And I believe we have close to 8,000 or 7,800 parcels. Our parcels are small. Farmers are generally smaller. We're not like some of the other districts where we have a lot of large landowners. But we're primarily a small farmer or district. So anyway, we have, I'm just double checking here, Mike. We do have, Mike's handling the slides, so I'm just kind of watching as we go. But we have 5 divisions and our board of directors represents each of the divisions. So we got Greg Tonison, who represents Division 1. Tom Chandler represents Division 2. Ray Moles, our board president, represents Division 3. Paul Sahota represents Division 4. And Tony Lewis, our board vice chair, represents Division 5. The district has about 227 miles of canals, about 80 miles of pipeline, We have 1,456 acres of recharge basins, and there's another 120 acres of recharge basins under development. Our canal system can handle about 2,000 CFS, which is about 4,000 acre feet per day. That's our diversion capacity. Now, water was first delivered to our area in 1876. There were canal companies that were established back then who had access to Kings River floodwater and had water rights. And so they were importing water into the area. The first of those was our church water supply. It comes through our Lone Tree Channel. And that water was first delivered in June of 1876. However, in 1921, with the new laws being passed, the area formed the Consolidated Irrigation District to take over for the canal companies, take over their assets, and then run the water supply and manage the water rights. So in 1921, the district was formed. One of the first things the district did was start acquiring property for groundwater recharge. And essentially, the story went like this. Prior to water being imported here, you had a water table that was whatever it was. But once we started importing water off the Kings River, the water table naturally rose. As you import water, start farming with it and spreading it, some of it goes to the underground, the water table rose until the turn of the last century when you started having problems with septic systems being flooded out, low spots being flooded, basements in Selma were having problems. But then what happened? You had a change in, you had some events that occurred that allowed us to start pumping groundwater. For example, you had the projects up in the Sierras where they were creating hydroelectric power. You also had the invention of the centrifugal pump. So now lands who did not have access to surface water could also start farming by using groundwater. So at that point, the water table began to drop again. So when the district was formed in 1921, they noticed the water table was dropping. And so one of the first things they did was acquire land to put more water in the underground. Our maximum diversion occurred in 1982. We diverted that year 691,000 acre feet, and we recharged about 310,000 acre feet in the district at that time. Our minimum diversion was 13,000 acre feet in 2014, and we recharged all of that water into our ponds at that point. Most recently, in 2023, big flood event year, record year, we put 300,000 acre feet of water in the underground through our ponds. That's not counting the groundwater seepage through our canal bottoms or the water we delivered to our farmers. Our ponds diverted and percolated 300,000 acre feet. Now, CID is well positioned for recharge thanks to a number of things, right? We have good geology, sandy soils, a deep aquifer. We also have access to floodwater. And like I said, we do have access on occasion to CVP water from the Fryan system. One of the best assets we have is our percolation rate. With the sandy soils we have, our average percolation rate is slightly over 1 acre foot per day. So you put a foot of water in our ponds, shut off the water, a day later it's empty. So you don't find that in a lot of places. So that's a little of the background. But the question you're asking is, why are we asking for more money? Okay, so we're going to get into that right now. So why are we asking for more money? First of all, the costs to run the district are going up. You're all aware of what's happening out there. Your costs are going up, so are ours. We also have a lot of aging infrastructure. The district was formed in 1921, but a lot of our infrastructure, check structures, drop structures, and diversion points and so forth were built in the 1930s. Those things are all starting to deteriorate, and with the rising costs of doing business and concrete and things like that, it's getting to the point where we need more bucks for that. However, the biggest issue we have to face and we have to pay for is dealing with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. As you're aware, we have to be sustainable. If we don't get our basin sustainable, the state's going to step in, and that's probably not a good thing for us. But clearly, if they step in, they're going to solve the problem one way or another. So we're trying to avoid that by dealing with SGMA ourselves. So when it comes to Sigma, our biggest issue in CID is groundwater overdraft. I mean, there are another number of issues we have to address, but it's groundwater overdraft that causes our biggest problem here. We don't have salt water intrusion. Our water quality is pretty good. We don't have subsidence to speak of. There is an issue about interconnected surface water streams and that aspect. But I think we have a plan to deal with that in the not too distant future, and we've been dealing with it historically by adding more water down the river. But anyhow, the bottom line is our issue here in Consolidated is groundwater overdraft. So under the new law, Sigma, we must be sustainable by 2040. And while 2040 is the deadline, the state is requiring us to meet certain mileposts. For example, we have to have overdraft reduction percentages imposed and met every 5 years. So by 2025, this year, we were supposed to have 10% of our overdraft dealt with. We've met that goal. Our next milepost is in 2030, where we need to have 30% of our overdraft dealt with. And then 2035, we have to have 60% of our overdraft dealt with. And then by 2040, we have to be completely sustainable. So we have these mileposts we have to meet. So there's kind of an urgency. We can't wait till 2040. So there's kind of urgency to address these issues. Now, when Sigma planning first began, our estimated average annual overdraft was 15,000 acre feet. However, newer data shows that our overdraft has increased to approximately 40,000 acre feet annually. And this is driven by a conversion to permanent higher water demand crops. And there's also the component of increased outflow due to pumping in surrounding areas. As the drought occurred and surface water supplies diminished, there's more pumping going on around us that's pulling water off underneath us, which also impacts our water levels, which then shows up as an overdraft on our records. So if we're going to meet overdraft, there are two ways. Well, we have basically three options. The first option is what? Stop pumping, right? So you impose some sort of pumping restriction. The second way to deal with that is to increase more surface water, bring more water in. That's how you address that on the supply side. Third option is a combination of the two. So for reasons we'll discuss shortly, we're going to tell you why we're going to focus on increasing more surface water into the district. And our goal here is to increase our supply by building infrastructure to capture up to another 100,000 acre feet of additional floodwater during wet years. And this would add an estimated 40,000 acre feet of new water supply to the district on an average annual basis. Now, CID has the right to divert floodwater off the Kings River. There are flood releases on the Kings River 4 out of 10 years, and they average about 100 days. So during these 4 out of 10 years, we're able to take whatever we can, and we're doing that as we speak. But we could take a lot more, and so we'll get into that shortly. Bringing the water in is our solution if we want to avoid pumping restrictions. But there's also a need to make sure we capture this flood water so that other entities out there don't come after it. So, for example, if we have an issue with other agencies who, because of the Sigma implications, are out looking for water off the Kings River. Our goal here is to, first of all, meet our overdraft and then capture much of this floodwater, lay claim to it so that other folks don't get it. And so it provides an urgency to us other than just trying to meet Sigma requirements. So we get these flood releases in 4 years out of 10. Okay, and it looks like between now and 2040, we'll have another 4 wet years. That gives us an opportunity to capture as much as we can and keep the state off our back by addressing our lowering groundwater table. Now, the proposed assessments we're looking at would fund new infrastructure like basins, conveyance, and diversion points off the river, and would help allow our system improvements to make sure we get this water to where it needs to be provided. All these investments will maximize our ability to capture and use Kings River floodwaters here in CID when they do occur. So in looking at why we're, excuse me, why we're focusing on basins, I mean, there are other things. We can have grower recharge programs, other possibilities to do that. And we haven't discounted any of those. And we do have an existing floodwater program, voluntary floodwater program for our growers now, so that when we do have flood releases, they take what they want. That's still in place. However, if you look at this chart, you'll see that most of the days when there's flood releases occurring, when we can take flood water, they occur in April, May, and June, maybe even into March. I don't think a lot of growers are going to want to flood their fields in the middle of June or May or even into July. So there's a practical limit on why we don't have just grower recharge programs to handle this. So again, the solution is to build our own basins, capture this flood water, and ensure we get the water here in the district. So again, our long-term vision is to, first of all, avoid pumping restrictions. And I know we can't guarantee anything, because if we get into an extended drought, or the state changes their regulations or laws and so forth, or we get more almonds being grown, we're going to have to deal with that as we go. But right now we have access to flood water, sandy soils, and unused canal capacity. And let me make a point about that. Earlier on, I said we have 2,000 CFS of diversion capacity off the river. In 2023, in the month of February, we were only diverting 950 CFS off the river when we could have diverted 2,000 CFS. Again, 1 CFS is 2 acre feet per day. And the reason we didn't divert more was because I didn't have ponds to put it in. So again, we want to try to get these ponds built, put more water in the underground, and make sure we stay above our thresholds that the state has had us established for our overdraft. Again, and we also want to preserve landowner autonomy. We want to keep the state off your back. We want to stay off your back. So the easiest way to do that is to make sure that we get the surface water in. You guys pump what you need. You make your own business decisions. We're not making them for you. So I think there's something to be said for that. And that's been our goal. Again, we want to keep the state off your back and make sure that they don't impose new restrictions that, or at least make it less likely they'll impose new restrictions that will impact how you do business. The other point we want to make is that by doing so, we protect your land values. If you have access to water and you don't have pumping restrictions and things of that nature, you end up with a higher or your land values are maintained. Now, I note here it's a source of the California chapter of the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers, that ground that enjoys Fresno Irrigation District, Alta Irrigation District, or Consolidated Irrigation deliveries remains the most liquid, with almond orchards changing hands between $21,000 to $42,000 per acre and a stable value trend. So it's best in class ground remains a haven. These are quotes from this report. So parcels enjoying senior surface water rights or proven recharge projects command the valley's highest bids and shortest marketing periods. So again, there are folks pointing out the fact that having access to flood water and the ability to maintain your water table makes your land values more sustainable. Now, the graphic on the next slide shows what it costs to farm under groundwater allocation programs in nearby basins versus what CID is proposing through its assessment increase. So it compares what it would be like to farm a 20-acre groundwater dependent vineyard, assuming an annual 2.3 acre foot per acre water demand. So if you take a look at the chart, you'll see that what we're proposing, if you had a 20-acre piece in Consolidated Irrigation District on the CID rate or gravity rate, it would cost you $2,520 at the maximum we're proposing. And by the way, we're not going to propose a maximum right away. We'll get into that here shortly, but that would be your rate if you wanted to farm your full 20 acres at the maximum rate. Now, if we went to the maximum rate, the pump classification annual fees would be $1,060. But if you look at Mid-Cahuilla, there, if you have a choice, you could either fallow 8 acres or pay an additional $3,364 for your farm to keep farming that full 20 acres. If you look at, say, Madera County, it's $250, and these numbers are over and above what your irrigation fees are. So if you look at East Cahuilla, it's $7,500. Weston's Water District is $12,000. But notice the differences here. In Westlands, you can only be able to farm 5.2 acres. If you don't want to farm or just 5.2, you want to farm the full 20 acres, you got to pay additional $12,000. So that's what's going on around us. You know, I'm not sure whether it's something information you want to hear, but that's what's going on around us. So we think we're in the ballpark because we're less than all these other fees. And by the way, these fees include your irrigation fees. So in Consolidated. The bottom line, the proposed assessments would provide the funding needed to build additional floodwater basins. And while no one can predict future weather conditions, CID is doing everything it can to avoid landowners having to fallow land because of pumping restrictions. So this plan gives us the best chance to protect farming in the area and avoid the unknowns of state intervention and maintain your land values. So you're hearing my speech, okay? You heard my speech. So now we're going to talk about what we're proposing as far as an assessment. So we're looking at a special benefit assessment. And these assessments, we're going to pay for recharge basins, conveyance improvements, and maintenance, river diversions to capture up to 100,000 acre feet in wet years. And again, those years occur in 4 years out of 10. They average 100 days. So 1,000 acres would give us 100,000 acre feet on an average wet year, which then, because they only happen 4 years out of 10, you multiply them by 0.4, you end up with 40,000 acre feet on an average annual basis by doing that. Now, we also want to secure and measure Kings River floodwater for use in CID, make sure other folks don't get it. We want to maintain and repair existing canal system for efficient deliveries. And we want to have funding to defend our CID's Kings River water rights. Our water rights issues and legal battles are becoming expensive. And then we also want to avoid groundwater pumping restrictions on state intervention or state intervention and state intervention. So anyway, so we have a per acre rate across 5 different classifications, which is shown here on the screen. So our first is our CID gravity rate. Users that receive surface water supplies through the CID system, current rate is $53. The proposed max rate would go up to $126. This is per acre. So the proposed max rate would go up to $126. However, we're proposing in our budget to the board for this next year going up to $74 an acre on the CID rate. The church water, they actually get their rate is currently $64. The proposed max rate would go up to $151, and the 2026 rate we're proposing is $89 for them. And then those who use only groundwater on a pump rate are currently paying $22 per acre. For maximum proposed rate for them would be $53, and we're proposing for next year going up to $31. We have a couple of other little classifications that, for example, the pond rate. Those folks who have land that we flood on a pond, they pay 50 cents an acre. Then we have about 40 or 60 acres, I believe, that are called free water. They're just parcels that were entitled to water before the district was formed, and so they get water through us. It doesn't cost them anything. Anyhow, this map shows the blue areas are lands with CID gravity water. The orange looking areas are lands that are eligible to receive church gravity water or Lone Tree water. The purple areas are lands that are on pump rate only. So you can see we have a large acreage that pumps groundwater only. And by this, another note is even those folks who take surface water, not all of them take their surface water, they're on groundwater as well. And by the way, even if they did take all their surface water, our average annual deliveries and diversions off the river don't cover all their farming needs. So every grower in our district pumps groundwater to some degree, some more than others, some entirely. So where are we going to spend your money? So the first thing we're gonna do is construct new recharge basins and expand our existing diversion capacity off the river. We want to fund and maintain our district facilities so we can take full advantage of the wet year flows. So we're gonna improve our delivery service. Like I said earlier, our district was formed in 1921, but most of the infrastructure was built in the 1930s with the pre-war President Roosevelt programs, the WPA and so forth. They're all built in the 1930s. So those things are all coming to their useful life, end of their useful life, all about the same time. And as you're aware, trying to buy concrete or something like that these days is an expensive proposition. So we want to spend more money to improve our delivery service. And by the way, we're talking about Sigma comprising about 80% of the proposed rate increase would go to Sigma, 20% would go for other things. We also want to defend our water rights. Again, we've got a water right application pending in front of the state board. That water right pending application was filed to protect our water rights and flood water off the Kings from the semi-tropic water storage district, who was up here trying to get Kings River water. Maintaining that application and working with the state to get that thing in place is costing us money, so we have to spend money dealing with that. We're looking at anticipated groundwater challenges from maybe some of the other areas to the west of us. And then there's always the possibility that the states can impose additional regulatory requirements on us. But although we're talking about a maximum rate increase going up to $126 for a CID gravity rate, we're still going to continue our efforts to pay for this stuff with grants. Now, we've been fairly successful with receiving grant money for Sigma projects. So since 2022, we've received a total of $8,649,000 in grant money, which has gone towards building recharge basins. We're going to continue that effort and try to expand it as we speak. And hopefully we won't have to or never get up to that full maximum proposed rate increase. With that, let's get to where let's talk about how you vote or how you get to vote, right? So the voting package with your ballot was mailed to the landowners in mid-May. There's a ballot for all APNs, and those votes are weighted by the acreage, correlated to the financial obligation of the affected property per acre. And then the assessment will pass if a majority of the votes received are in favor. So it's 50% plus one. So if you submit your ballot, if 50% of the votes are in favor plus one, it will pass. Now, a public hearing to tabulate the ballots is set for August 5th, 2025 at 10 a.m. at the Kearney Ag Center, just east of Parlier in our district. So you have the option to mail in the ballot in the provided self-addressed envelope, or you can hand deliver the ballot to the secured ballot box at our CID office, or you can actually bring it with you to the August 5th public hearing meeting and submit it before we close the hearing, and then you can vote that way. Now, in the meantime, if you lost your ballot, here's a phone number to call and request a new ballot. You can actually change your ballot prior to the close of the hearing if you want, but they must be received prior to the conclusion of the public hearing on August 5th. And our office address is 2255 Chandler Street in Selma if you want to bring it to our office. It goes to a locked box and we don't even see it. With that, I've kind of gone kind of fast here, but we'll open it up for questions and we'll try to provide answers.
Great, so we do have a couple questions that have been submitted throughout your presentation. The first one says, why aren't the drainage ponds filled for longer periods of time? For example, the pond at Leonard and South Avenue.
They are filled when there are flood releases. Occasionally we'll spill water into the ponds when to allow our ditch tenders to blow off water. So for example, on a Saturday night, some farmers shut off, they don't take their water. They've ordered, we've got it coming down the canal and they decide they're not going to take it. We have to find a place for that water. we can't find a spot for it, we dump it in the pond. So you see a little minor spill there. So we keep watering our ponds for that reason. But generally, the ponds are full only during those big flood events that occur 4 years out of 10. And the flood events usually last about 100 days. And so the ponds are going to be empty 6 years out of 10. And then even during those wet years, they're going to be empty for 265 days in those wet years. So that's why they're not full all the time.
Okay, another question. What percent of farms on either drip or micro sprinklers use CID surface water for their systems? Are most using only groundwater?
Right now, we have about 47,000 acres on groundwater only. And we have about 91,000 acres, I believe, on surface water. Of that 91,000, only about 30,000 actually take surface water. Most of them gone to drip. Some of those folks will take water during the flood years. And so they will take water occasionally, but the answer to your question is if you take about 30,000 acres out of 141, that's the percentage that's actually taking surface water on a regular basis.
Right. Another question related to the pond, the first question. It's about the pond on South and Leonard. Why is that area vacant and not being used to store water?
You're referencing the little piece there that's unused. We had talked about moving some of our operations out there, so we would reserve some of that land for the operations out there. We haven't made a decision on that yet, but if we decide we're not going to do that, definitely we'll construct a pond on there's I think it's about 10 acres of open ground right there. But our goal here is either to move some of our operations out there from our current near downtown Selma, or we'll build a pond.
Nothing in the queue now. Maybe give people a chance in case they're typing their question.
Here's your chance. I'm sitting right here. Here's your chance to beat me up or ask good questions. And don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask. You know, these Zoom meetings are they seem formal, but they're not. Let's just talk and we'll try to answer every question you have.
I think one more note, I guess, while we're waiting to see if any questions pop up is we're within about 3 weeks of the election date. And so if you have any questions that come to mind after the webinar and before the election, feel free to reach out to the office, and we're available any day to answer your questions and make sure you have all the information you need to fill out your ballot and vote.
A raised hand.
Yeah, same person who's asking the question about the pond, so.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So you did answer a lot of the questions that I had in your in the webinar here, but I wanted to ask about the usage of a lot of these ponds. I see that they stay empty most of the year round, and there's the pond just off of Parlor Avenue and Del Rey Avenue. It sits empty almost year round, and I was thinking instead of purchasing new land for development, why don't we spend some of that money on fixing and developing that area? I went down there the other day and took some rough measurements, and you're sitting on, let's see, 52.16 acres in that pond in the largest area, and there's a smaller pond in the back that's about 6.53 acres. And if we were to purchase something similar, that would be a lot of money, like you had stated earlier, and we could use that money to develop that area. And with it being located next to Walnut and Kirby and the Highland Canal that branches off to the Kingsburg branch just up the way, about a couple miles, if we could figure out a way to pump water and keep water in there and then use that to pump water out into the canals in the event we can't get water release from the dam or what have you.
Yeah, generally, you're talking about the Stroud Pond, and there's two little ponds to the northeast of that. Those ponds in those wet years, we fill them up. So they are full. So, you know, we're trying to maximize the amount of water we get in there. As far as water banking, we bring the flood water in, and then rather than pumping it back out and giving it to the growers, we ask the growers to pump it. So we're just putting the ground for you guys to pump. That way there, we don't have to pump back out, put in our canals if we don't get enough surface water entitlement.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then do we know any percentages on of all of the land and properties that Consolidated Irrigation owns? Um, to what percent are we using them to their fullest capacity during wet years and dry years and the years in between?
During the wet years, they're maxed out. There are times when the Highway Patrol calls me because we put too much water in, we flooded the roads, okay? Um, in 2000, I believe it's 2017, I told my water master, fill up all the ponds to the high water mark. And on Clovis Avenue, just north of Nebraska, the high water mark is the white line on Clovis Avenue. So my water master filled it up to the white line on Clovis Avenue. So I got a phone call from Highway Patrol and we had to reduce the amount of water going in. But the answer to your question is we fill up our ponds to the max that we can during those wet years. Now, one of the caveats here is that some of our wet years, they only last, well, say in 2024, we only had 20 days of flood release. So you only have 20 days of water in there. So sometimes it doesn't look like it's a lot of water, but we try to fill them up as fast as we can and keep them full. 2023, we had all our ponds absolutely full and we kept them full for 120 days, I believe, you know, so 152 days, that's what it was. And so, again, we're trying to maximize the use. So if you pay attention, just see how full they're going to be. And then we have a newsletter now. We'll talk about flood releases. You can follow those things and see when we start the flood releases and see how full the ponds are currently and in the future.
Okay. So, would there be any possibility to develop the Stroud Pond to hold water year round outside of the times when we flood it?
The question is, we don't have access to water year round. Now, our average irrigation season is 3 months. So we start getting entitlement generally in May. That's when maximum entitlement starts occurring and goes through end of June. By July or mid-July, our entitlement off the river is done. So we don't get any water past that. So again, we have water for 3 months.
All right, that pretty much answers my question. But yeah, I would still like to see development of what we currently have, and like you said, replacement of older pipelines since they're reaching the end of their life. So I'm just concerned about the increase. I am in favor of it, but if we do increase, why spend a lot of that money on new properties when we could do better development?
Yeah, I mean, where we are now is if you recall, well, if you know, you don't have to have deeper ponds. It's the actual surface area. There are studies out of University of Arizona that show that flooding basins more than 3 or 4 feet deep starts becoming counterproductive. The water gets, you get stratified, and the weight of the water itself causes problems. So it's the surface area. So digging deep holes is not necessarily the best way to go. What you want is to expand your surface area. So in the case of the Stroud Pond, you see the back part of that pond is kind of shallow.
Hmm.
Trust me, it's taking a lot of water. So our goal here is, like I said, in January and February, actually in February of 2023, we were pulling 950 CFS off the river. That's what our ponds would take. We had all the ponds were full. That's the max they could take. But I have 2,000 CFS canal capacity, so I just need more ponds to put it in.
Yeah, I don't remember if I read it off of your guys' website or not, but it said that's 4.5 million dollar or million acre feet of water was released in 2023 into the Kings River. That's about what 1.47 trillion gallons or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is quite a bit of water. One of the wettest years we had. So
Yeah, and the way it works is that as it goes down the river, we're able to pull whatever we can off. If I have a home for it, I take the water.
okay.
And so, like I said, our issue has been, we need more ponds because I'm only pulling 950 CFS off the river in 2023 in February. Now, during the irrigation season, we went up to 1,500 CFS because the farmers were taking water on top of that, right?
Yes.
And we reduced the water going into our ponds to give us some freeboard in case farmers shut off. And so, but we kept our ponds about 80% full, even during the irrigation season. So again, during the irrigation season, we're pulling 1,500 CFS, but most of that's going to the farmers. Now, keep in mind that the best way to get water underground is give it to the farmers so they shut off their pumps. So that's been one of our goals too. Get it to the farmers, they shut off their pumps. That's ascending, or it's even better than trying to percolate water in the underground.
Okay. And then one last question, not pertaining to this. I had heard through some other farmers at a meeting a while back that the water, or there was a discussion about selling water. Um, this is my first time ever attending one of these meetings. Is that a reoccurring thing that happens at these meetings, discussing the sale of water?
Yeah, what we've done in the past is uh, mostly prior to, I forget the last time we sold water, but it was probably prior to 2018. There was an avenue for us to create revenue when we had shortfalls. And so we've sold water in the past. It's only an occasional thing, or we've done deals where it's a 2-for-1. For every 2 acre-feet of water someone gives us, we give them back 1. So again, it's like a water sale to provide funding for us, but we only do that on a rare occasions. But we do discuss it at the end of every year. We put that as one of the options. For example, this year, we're probably looking at about maybe 20,000 acre-feet or 15,000 acre-feet left over on August 5th. The question is, do you run that through, say, another 10 days in August? Do you store it behind the dam, keep it behind the dam there, or do you sell it, or do you put it in the ponds? So those are our options. So every end of year meeting, we talk about those options, including the water sales. Now, at this point with Sigma, selling water is counterproductive because we're trying to maintain our water table above what we call the minimum threshold that we have in our groundwater sustainability plan. And so selling water allows us, get another 3 or 4 dry years in a row, we're going to get below that minimum threshold. The state's going to threaten us with stepping in. So we want to avoid that and just make sure we keep as much water in the district as possible. Now, having said that, if someone comes along and says, I'll give you $2,000 an acre foot, and we can make $10 million on a deal, the board may want to look at that to help pay for additional recharge basins. But I don't see that happening in the near future. So I think water sales are probably they're going to be farther and fewer between unless we get some special circumstances. It's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but
No, that's fine.
the direct answer to your question was, yeah, we do. We talk about it at the end of every year. We talk about the possibility, do you want to sell water? But we don't do it very often.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be all for me. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
All right, we haven't gotten any more questions in the Q&A feature. Is there anyone else who wants to be unmuted and have any dialogue or ask any questions? You can just, as a reminder, hit the raise hand and we'll be able to allow you to unmute yourself.
If you're hesitant to get on the webinar and raise your voice, you can always call me afterwards at the office. We'll be more than happy to talk with you, answer questions. Again, we're going to have the actual hearing to count the ballots is August 5th. We'll start off with a regular meeting And it's open to public discussion at that point. You can come in, ask questions again, and then vote if you want to. But I would suggest calling me or Mike, call the office, and we'll try to answer your questions. And so that you can make an informed decision one way or the other.
Great.
And if anybody wants to refer back to this webinar, it's going to be posted to our website shortly thereafter, and it'll be available until August 5th.
Great. Okay, there's no more questions. I think that's probably a good place to close. All right. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you for your time. And like I said, don't hesitate, call the office. We'll answer questions.